now.
Alright, so I did a presentation on personal budgeting. Personal budgeting is not as hard as some people can make it out to be, and it can really improve your daily life. So there are some pretty basic steps to creating a budget. First, identify how you are spending your money. Then you're going to set goals that take into account your long-term financial objectives. Then you're going to track your spending to make sure it stays within your guidelines. So first things first, you want to put together a basic list of your monthly income and expenses. Then you want to try and gather all financial statements that you can. So if you have receipts throughout the past month that you've used your credit card or debit card to buy something, you have those receipts still, try and put them all together and it'll help you get a better estimate of how you're actually spending your money. And just a basic list that you can put together of what your income is and what your expenses are. Then you're going to make a list of your actual monthly expenses. Now, there's two different types of monthly expenses. One is a regular monthly expense. A regular monthly expense is one like your pay, something that's regular like a paycheck, but for an expense would be something like rent, utilities, or insurance. These things are things that recur month to month that you will always be paying. Then an estimate for your variable expenses. Now, a variable expense is an expense like eating out or going to a movie or something like that that doesn't necessarily happen every month or happen the same time, the same amount of times every month. These expenses are probably where you're going to end up cutting from eventually if you need to cut in your budget at all. Then you're going to make a list of all of your monthly revenue. Most likely your monthly revenue is going to be your paycheck. It's going to be a regular paycheck. However, it could vary slightly from month to month how much your paycheck is. So you're going to make an estimate regarding that. However, if it is a regular paycheck, that will make it just easier for you to plan out exactly how much you'll be making as revenue. Then you're also going to make an estimate regarding non-recurring monthly revenue. This can include anything that isn't your paycheck, basically anything like if you have a birthday or some kind of thing where you would be receiving money that isn't part of your regular revenue. Then you're going to total your regular monthly expenses and your variable monthly expenses, and that's your expenses category. Then the same you'll do with your revenue, and you'll compare the two. If your revenue is greater than your expenses, you're off to a great start because that means you're making more than you're spending. However, if your expenses are greater than your revenue, this means that you're spending more than you're making, which obviously is not a good thing, and you're going to need to make some adjustments. So to make adjustments, you want to look at your non-recurring expenses or your variable expenses like we talked about earlier, things like movies, eating out, and things like that. And you want to see where you can make some cuts. Possibly you want to maybe not go to the movies as many times a month. Maybe not go out to dinner and eat home a little bit. Things like this can very quickly cut down your expenses, which is what you need to keep in your budget goals. Now, remember, this also doesn't mean that you have to completely stop from ever having any fun and going out and enjoying things and doing fun things. You just need to restrain yourself to the point where you're keeping within a budget that you're happy with. Then you want to take into account your long-term financial objectives. Things like this could be a car. Let's say you want to buy a car. You need to account for that in your budget. You want to buy a car by next year. Each month you want to set aside a certain amount of money and put that aside as part of your car budget. This will build up over each month if you set it aside and plan for it in your budget. So any long-term financial objectives that you might want to have, make sure you have a category for them in your budget. This way you won't have to cut into your money when you want to buy it. This could also be in your savings account. This could be your savings account, and it is recommended that you put 10% of your monthly revenue into your savings account, but obviously plan according to your budget. If that's not possible, then that's not possible, maybe 5%, but you want to put a certain percent aside every month to make sure you're saving. Also, there's another account that wasn't listed here, but it's in order to prevent being ill-prepared in an emergency, budget for a miscellaneous expense account. A miscellaneous expense means that it's not something that you were expecting. It could be a car accident or something. It happens to all of us. You get into this accident and you're not ready, you don't have the money for it. So a certain amount of money each month into a miscellaneous expense account. This way you don't have to cut into your savings account. These are just some helpful tips. Whenever possible, use cash rather than a credit or debit card. I know it sounds a little silly, but actually taking the cash and paying with the cash is a lot harder to do than just swiping a card, so it could suggest that you spend as much money. When you go out, have a list and stick to it. It's proven that it's much easier to spend less money if you have a list when you go to the store and you just check off what's on your list. So when you walk into the store, you may see things that you didn't think you needed, and then you end up picking them up and you spend more than you intended to. So the easiest way to cut down on your spending, especially on things like groceries, would be having a list and sticking to it. And lastly, including a miscellaneous expense account so you're always prepared, which we just talked about. Now finally, actually creating your budget. So here I've listed out an example budget. These are all different expense accounts. These are different expenses that you have, and this is for the month of February, how much you plan on spending on each of these things. Make your total at the end, and this would be your budget. Now, after the month of February has passed, then you're going to put your actual spending next to what your budget was. Then you see what the difference is in your third category. The areas that are highlighted in red, these are the areas that were overspent. And it makes it very clear to show you where you overspent and where you need to take a look at to possibly make some adjustments. So for example, in this one, it's travel, groceries, eating out, and miscellaneous expenses. So obviously this was something that we weren't expecting. Maybe getting some cheaper options at the grocery store. Gas, I don't know, you would have to make some adjustments there, see where you're spending on that, maybe find a cheaper gas station or something like that. Travel, obviously just take a look at that. Maybe you don't have the funds to travel as much if you want to stay within your budget. And lastly, I'm going to suggest that you make sure you track this month to month, because it will help you stay within your budget if every single month you do this, and gradually over time you can learn your spending patterns and really make some changes and make some lasting changes to your budget and your spending habits. And you've now created a budget. So try to stick to your budget as best you can, but obviously there may be times you want to spend a little here, and that's okay. But that's your basic fundamentals of creating a budget.